Hi there, Douglas V. Gibbs here. Welcome to my video page, and we're going to talk about localism, federalism, and I'm going to start with a video that I saw. Candace Owens, who I totally recognize as being a fantastic conservative, and she's picking up on the constitutional thing, was interviewed by Russell Brand. Russell Brand, long-haired British commie Marxist actor, get him to the Greek movie guy, that guy. And so he has a podcast. He invited Candace Owens to be on, which, more power to Russell Brand for being willing to do that. I was, totally stunned. And in the video, it's like over an hour. And Russell Brand, he spews all kinds of Marxist ideas and, let's go after the rich and, redistribution of wealth and the whole bit. And then when he tries to describe what would be his version of utopia, he accidentally describes federalism in a sense. Not completely, but in a sense. Localism, federalism, what the Constitution's all about. Candace Owens caught him on it. And then he denied it and started arguing with her about it. Well, anyway, before I go any further, here's that small portion of that big, long video. Here's the clip for it.
What we're going to do on the island now is that people can be, they're fully autonomous. They can do what they want. Now, I suppose we are going to have communities. Now, I think it might be hard for human beings to live in communities that are too big. I think many of the problems that we're experiencing now is it's hard for us to hold the number of relationships. We see too much variety of life. It's confusing for people. I think we need to live in smaller communities, and within these communities, these units, let's call them Soviets. People have full democracy within it. People vote on how they want their resources, as happened in Porto Alegre, Brazil. You vote on, say each community is allocated a budget, and the members of that community vote for how to spend that budget. Okay. Right, that's good so far.
Okay.
We do need some municipal resources, i.e. roads.
I agree. Police officers, firemen.
Police, firemen,
right.
Nurses, all of those. Mm-hmm. So that revenue has got to come from somewhere.
Absolutely.
Private business world isn't going to...
That's a tax I'm comfortable with because it's for municipalities. And that's the difference between not theft and something that I get to use if I need it.
Now, are we going to need some kind of... Because people are going to be jealous of this. They're going to want to come and live here with us. We're going to... I don't know how we're going to control what population we have here.
Right.
We're going to need to know, right, okay, we can,
with
our
build a
resources, we can sustain... We're not building...
I'm sorry.
We're an island, thankfully. We're surrounded by a moat already. Look, what I'm saying is that there are so many unexplored possibilities, and people on both the left and right, and God knows I've spoke to enough of them now, impede further debate and progressing by insisting that their pre-existing ideology is the only thing that could possibly work, as if history were rich enough and long enough, that blinking of an eye, the expanding of one flower that is humanity, were enough to examine all possibilities. Full democratization. That's what I'm arguing for.
So everything that you just drew is America. The founding...
No, it bloody well isn't.
No.
Because what's not in here.
Stop.
Ferguson, Donald Trump.
Stop. The founding principles of America is what you just drew, and that's what conservatives fight for. I'm going to again state that you are a conservative, you just haven't acknowledged it yet.
I'm not conservative.
You are. You don't realize it.
I'm just going to say that you're an anarchist, and you don't acknowledge it, because you want to break down all power structures, and you think that people should not be impeded by government.
I want limited government, what you just wrote.
So he says he wants to democratize everything. First of all, a pure democracy, that's dangerous. But what he does is he starts talking about democracy at the more local level. That it works on that. What he wants to do in his little utopia is have little units, because if they're smaller and they do democracy at the smaller level, but then they're on this island, but the island's got to be protected. Don't worry, we have a moat. Don't want to build a wall because that sounds too much like I don't know, conservatism. But it's an island, so they're protected, and I was halfway expecting him to say, have a government to protect, from outside invaders and all that, which is essentially what federalism is. And so I was surprised as he's going through this, and she caught it. She says, and I thought she didn't the first time I watched it. I had to watch it again, and then she says, well, that's what the Founding Fathers did. You just described federalism. And of course he denies it because, he wouldn't want to admit that he has a conservative bone in his body. Now, that said, let's set aside conservatism, liberalism, Republican Party, Democrat Party, set it all aside. Constitution is not a political party document. It's It's not an ideological document. It's an American document that establishes our system, which was designed to stand the test of time. And, well, let's do it this way. Let me show you really what our system's all about. Okay, so here's the island. Here's Russell Brand's island. We'll draw a little island for him. And on that island, we have these little units, these little communities, as he was explaining. These, he called them, what do you call them, Soviets? Well, how about we call them states? Used to be colonies, they became states. So each one is a state. And the states understand that on this island they have a lot in common. And so they're going to become a union. They're going to come together. Individually, they're very different. Individually, they have their own culture. They have their own language. They're very different. They're autonomous. They're different from each other, sovereign, whatever. And they're on this island, and there's all these people trying to come here, but there's also forces trying to come against them because they're jealous. It's a great system. It works wonderfully. And you notice each little state's a little different. A little red, little blue, little green, whatever. Because they have they're all different from each other, and that's okay. The outside system, that with all the arrows on the outside, that's the federal government. And it's only there to protect the island, to protect those states. Let the states handle their internal issues and keep the outside invaders away, common defense, trade with other countries, do that, protect the border, that outside rim there, defend our trade routes. So, okay, so here's a couple of them up close. So we have a couple of our states, and notice all the people, they're the same in each one. They kind of got their own thing, right? The states are different. But you know what? There's this one guy, and he's in this one state, and he kind of sad because, it's not the way he likes it. So he decides, I'm going to vote with my feet. I'm going to leave. Because, it's just not for me. And he has that option because the states are different. There's a bunch of them, and they handle their own issues. Federal government doesn't get involved. It's outside the system. And it's a wonderful thing. If you don't like where you're at, fine. Go somewhere where it's more like what you want. But, these states, they also communicate with each other. They trade with each other. They got transportation between each other. Because you know what? State A may have goods that State B wants. State B may have goods State A wants. So they trade in the commerce. And as long as there's no fight between them, that external line with the X's on it, the federal government, doesn't get involved. It's really there. It's a barbed wire fence that protects them from outside influence, from outside attacks, and all that. Now, you're going to have a mixture of other people in these states, though, sometimes, that are not necessarily fully in line with the ideology and all that. And that's okay. If you're in a state and it's not exactly agreeing with you, you have a choice. Put up or shut up, fight to change it, or, like I said, vote with your feet and go to a different state. Okay, so here we go now. Let's go a little further now. Let's go a little beyond this. So let's explain the political spectrum. Because, see, we have this right-left dynamic that's going on. And to be honest, what it is considered to be isn't accurate. All right, so what I'm drawing there, this is the right-left system or political spectrum as it was seen in France before the French Revolution. You notice on the far right there's the crown with the cross because the king was divinely appointed. He had there was the divine right of kings. You weren't a citizen either. You were a subject in Europe and countries like France. And so to the far right was the monarchy and the state church, because remember, the king has he's the divine right. He's divinely appointed, so he's has a voice with God. So the church and the king kind of had this unholy alliance, and it was, to be honest, totalitarian. On the far left, as you see, it says change and secularism, and we could add collectivism there too, because individualism really didn't play into their ideas when it came to the French Revolution. So you had to the right, no change. Stay with the monarchy, state church. To the left, change, secularism, collectivism. There's all the desks at the front of the building, right? And so we got our guys on the left there, the little blue dots, and on the far right, we're going to put the little red dots. That's the king and the church. And so we're told today, well, if you're religious and if you don't want to change, that means you're far right. There's the moderates in the middle, little green guys. And if you're left, it's all about change and secularism. Here's the thing: we're not France. We never had a king. We never had an established church. So that political spectrum is actually wrong. It does not work. It does not apply to the United States of America. So what political spectrum does apply to the United States of America? Well, let's kind of set it up a little different. Since we didn't have a king and we didn't have we don't have an established church, we don't have a nobility. What we have then is on our political spectrum is it's a right-left in the sense of how much government, because we're all about liberty. It's all about limiting government, but yet we also recognize government's important. So to the far right is 0% government. To the far left is 100% government. So less government to the right, more government to the left. Kind of explains the conservative liberal thing. Dead center is the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution created a large government, the federal government, but limited the heck out of it. So it's dead center. It is rule of law. U.S. Constitution, rule of law, dead center, far right, 0% government. I guess you could say, I don't know, anarchy? Yeah, we can call that anarchy. Problem with the anarchy is, well, it's chaotic. It doesn't work. It falls apart. 0% government, it cannot survive. On the far left, you've got oligarchy. And in an oligarchy, you have the powerful few controlling the many. And, examples of oligarchy could be communism, and communist is socialism. I was talking to a U.S. history socialist professor, and he says, well, I don't like the fact that you say socialism is status. It's all about us all getting along. But what if somebody doesn't want to comply? Well, he needs to be re-educated and made to comply. Hence the statism. That's why socialism is to the far left, 100% government. Monarchy, we just talked about that, 100% government. And it's an oligarchy. While you may have the one person at the top, he's got his consuls around him. A theocracy, like Islam or what was going on in the Holy Roman Empire. Theocracy is also not good. Yes, fascism is also on the far left, 100% government. Fascism is socialism. Socialism just applied in a different manner. The United States Constitution, however, that is not an oligarchy or an anarchy. It's a republic. And it's based on a social contract that was written. Now, democracy is actually, believe it or not, a little bit to the right of the Constitution. And what it does is it allows the people to vote for everything. But what happens is eventually democracy goes to anarchy, it goes to chaos, mob rule, and then once it becomes mob rule and in the chaos, people start crying out for order, and the anarchy then, people who cause the anarchy then become the oligarchy leaders. And so from democracy, you go, which is a transitional system, you go to anarchy, over to oligarchy. Democracy is a temporary transitional system. The U.S. Constitution, republic, that is under the rule of law. The rule of law, right and wrong, and there is a difference. It's not pure democracy. There are other constituencies, like the states. So here we got the United States of America, and we got the different states. The states themselves sent their diplomats, their delegates to the Constitutional Convention to create the federal government. Because each one of these states, and we'll put a dot on each one of them, that they are those little boxes we were talking about earlier on that island. Remember that? These are those littler communities that Russell Brand is talking about. And they are sovereign. They take care of their own business. They are autonomous. And then they realize that separate, they couldn't survive, especially against the British Empire. So they joined in a union of states, so as to be stronger against the rest of the world. But the thing is, they bickered about a lot of things. So what they did is they created this federal government that is all the way around the country there, making it a union and protecting it. But the federal government's job is not to get involved in the state's business. Those little boxes, they handle their own issues. That federal government, that little thing around the whole country, that is there to handle the external issues, to protect us from attacks that are coming in from the outside, foreign influences, to regulate or control how many immigrants come in, control that border. They are there to take care of trade with other countries, to defend our trade routes, and all of that stuff. So the federal government was created to handle the outside stuff, to protect the union of states. And it's really not a union of states. It's a federation of states. That's why it's called a federal government. So we have a federation of states that came together, and they knew that independently on their own, they would be vulnerable, but as a union, they could work it out. But they still wanted to take care of their own internal business, so they created the federal government to handle the external stuff so that the state legislatures could worry about the internal stuff. The internal stuff is none of the federal government's business. All right, so now, the hierarchy of our system is at the top, well, almost at the top, we'll get to that, is we the people. Consent to the governed. It says so in the Declaration of Independence. And under the consent of the governed, and the next most powerful thing would be the states and local government. So we have we the people at the top. This is almost like a pyramid or something, but we'll draw it this way. So we have we the people at the top, the states and local government right below we the people. So we the people control the states, and then we the people and the states together control the federal government. The federal government's there to serve we the people and the states. And then under the federal government, we the people and the states have a voice. Our voices are in the House and the Senate, better known as Congress. So we the people, the House of Representatives is our voice. The states appointed the U.S. senators, and so the U.S. Senate was the voice of the states in the federal government. That was their way of keeping an eye on the monster that they had created with the U.S. Constitution. And you have two constituencies that look at things differently, making law. Then under that, you have the executive. The executive branch, the president's job is only to execute the laws of the country. That is his job. He's not the leader of the whole country. He's not supposed to get involved in our business. And notice at the very bottom, judicial branch. To apply the laws, and then let's add what really should be at the top. Oh, there's not enough room there. Let's move that a little bit to the right. The real king here, above we the people, is God. Now, so God, we the people, states, federal government have the Congress, then the executive branch, and then the judicial branch. Okay? But now what we have is it's reversed, right? It seems like the judicial branch seems to be at the very top, then the president, then the Congress, then the states, and the people are somewhere at the bottom. And if there is, if God does exist, he's probably not believed in anyway. So everything's been inverted. It's upside down. Now here's the thing. Our system is made of checks and balances. So each of these different groups here check the different groups. Now we're told that the judicial branch and executive branch is there to check each other and to check the Congress. Really, Congress, notice that, House and Senate, checks the executive branch and the judicial branch. That's their job. Our voice and the state's voice is supposed to check the executive branch, judicial branch. The states are supposed to check the federal government, as does we the people through the House of Representatives. And then the people, well, we check the states and our local government. And then who checks us? Well, as we work our way up, I have a feeling once again, we're out of room here. Let's get rid of that arrow there and put one that you can see a little better. God checks we the people. God checks we the people. We the people check the states. We the people, states, and God check the federal government. The Congress checks the executive branch and judicial branch. That's the way it's supposed to work. That's the way it was designed. But it's not happening, is it? And this is our problem. We wonder why we're having so many difficulties and problems and ideological battles and everything's just all messed up. Well, that right there, what I'm showing you, it's upside down. It's upside down when it comes to checks and balances and when it comes to the level of power. If that wasn't upside down, we wouldn't be having the problems we are having. The Constitution was established to set it up the way I'm showing you right here. God, we the people, states, federal government, Congress, executive branch, judicial branch at the very bottom. Okay, now that we've said all that, let me say a couple more things and then we'll wrap this up. The federal government, remember, was created so that the state legislatures could handle local issues. You do not want the president and Congress and the judicial branch and all that, the federal government, involved in your lives. It has no business getting. That's the reason why in like Second Amendment says shall not be infringed. None of their business. The authorities granted are all that's granted, and it's all external stuff, or things that help the union, protect the union, like squabbles between the states. To act as a mediator, post office so we can communicate with each other, and then like I said earlier, the external stuff like common defense, trade with other countries, protecting the border. Maritime law, protecting the trade routes, and so on and so forth. All right. Now, so the federal government, if it is not there to get involved in your life, it's there to take care of the external stuff. Then it's not there to rule. It's not there to be the boss over us. It's there to serve us. It's there to protect this country and to secure our rights. And then as government gets closer to us, state, county, city, it becomes more democratic. Originally, the only democratic vote at the federal level was the House of Representatives. The presidents were elected by electors who were appointed by the state legislatures. Why? Because it's the state legislatures the president's really serving and protecting so that they can handle local issues. The senators were appointed by the state legislatures. Why? Because they weren't really there for the people. They were there for the states, to protect the state's interests. That's the reason why they're the ones that ratify treaties and confirm appointments and things like that. Our voice would be in the House. Now that said, well, Doug, consent to the govern. Well, the House has the ultimate voice. The money, the power of the purse strings. The apportionment of the money, the appropriation of money doesn't happen without the House starting it first. The budget is up to the House, the people's voice. So how do you give consent? Consent to the govern? You pay for it. If you don't want to give consent, don't pay for it. Well, Doug, what would the founders think of the government shutdowns? The people are doing their job. They're starving it of money if they don't like what's going on. That's the whole point of the system. Then when it got closer, state level, people voted for the governor and the assembly, but the state senate was appointed by the county leadership, just like the U.S. Senate was appointed by the state leadership. And instead of being based on population, for democracy's sake, it was one per county. Like the U.S. Senators is 2 per state, regardless of population. Could you imagine how many state senates would be different if that was the case still? And guess who changed the Constitution and the original way it was being done that way? The courts. 1964, Reynolds v. Sims. After the 17th Amendment in 1913, and the states, lost their suffrage in the Senate. In other words, the states lost their voice. They can't vote anymore or anything. They have to abide by laws they had nothing to do with creating. Then it was decided that the state senates needed to be more democratic too. But in addition to being voted in by the people, they also decided to set them up in districts. So that instead of 1 per county, like in California, Senate District 2, I believe it's like 8 counties are in Senate District 2. But LA County has like 13 Senate districts. Could you imagine how different the state Senate in California would be if we were doing it the original Republican form of government way? The way the Constitution and the founders originally intended. And then you get down to the counties and you have even more vote. As a matter of fact, the sheriff now, the executive of the county, you vote for that, you vote for your supervisors, and then you get down to the city and you vote for pretty much just about everything. Handful of things you don't, people get hired or appointed, but for the most part, the democracy gets larger the closer it gets to the people. The further away it's from the people, the less democracy. And more of a republic it is, so that the states can have a voice and so on and so forth, so that the checks and balances can operate the way they're supposed to. But the checks and balances have been removed. The state's voice has been removed. They're trying to make us more of a democracy, and in the end, that island with the little boxes that Russell Brand says is utopia is no longer possible. So what has happened is that ocean that's around that island now has become vicious, and it is the tidal waves and the sharks and the attacks externally are on us. We were originally designed to have little units handle the local stuff. Those little units came together in a union. The bigger unit that protected them, secures our rights, the federal government had nothing to do with the little units. It was none of their business. It handled keeping everybody out of their business, such as invaders, foreign influences, things like that, so that the states could handle their business. Federal government was created to serve the states and the people, not rule over them. We're not supposed to be a national government. We're supposed to be a federal government. We have a federation of states, smaller units that handle their own personal local stuff. And it's okay if they're different. It's okay if one is red, one's blue, one's purple, one's yellow, one's green. That's okay. It's okay if one has one law regarding children or babies or things like that, and another one has a different law. They're supposed to be different from each other. They're individualistic. But see, here's why now the left hates it. They hate individualism. They believe that we are not capable of making our decisions. There must be a ruling elite there to make sure everything is done right. And also, to stop those rich people, because, people will get rich because some people just have more talent, and it's not fair. You ever got a job from a poor person? The free market is there for a reason. So, well, Doug, these big corporations, they get control and they can't be toppled. Remember when Kmart used to be the big mart and the Walmart killed it? Remember when MySpace was the big social media and then Facebook came along? In a free market, the big bad corporations eventually get taken over by somebody else, or beaten by somebody else. And the distribution of wealth happens basically through the free market, not through government deciding who gets what. And when someone like Facebook did really well, did they hoard all their money? No. They wanted to become bigger, so there was more jobs, there was more product, and it was good for the economy in the long run. Or Amazon, or whoever we're talking about. I meant Amazon, but you know what I mean. That's all our system. Are there problems? Absolutely. Corporatism, where the corporations get involved in government, they got no business doing that. The founders called it mercantilism. The same problem is going on. The press lying. You ought to read what Jefferson had to say about the press back during the days of the American Revolution. These are all problems that happen in a republic. No system is perfect, but as Winston Churchill once said, the United States, the American system, is the worst system in the world except for all others. And we're not supposed to be a democracy. Jefferson called a democracy the tyranny of the majority, where 51% can vote away the rights of the other 49%. John Adams said there was never a democracy that didn't commit suicide. James Madison said that democracies are short in their lives and violent in their deaths. We are a republic, and our social contract is the U.S. Constitution, which establishes the federal government to handle the exterior issues, external issues, disputes between the states, and things that have to do with the union, and that's it. Everything else is none of their business. Those little boxes on Russell Brand's Island take care of their own business without external influence, not only from invaders, but from the federal government. The federal government's just there to make sure they can do their stuff by protecting them from the invaders. All right, so that is localism, federalism, Russell Brand, Candace Owens. My name is Douglas V. Gibbs, douglasvgibbs.com, politicalpistachio.com. I've written books. Go check out my books. Donate on my websites if you can. And I'd like to thank all of the organizations that I'm a part of that help me get the word out about what I do. Constitution classes, Constitution Association. I'm a fellow for the American Freedom Alliance. I'm an instructor for 1776 Forever Free. And let's see, I'm president of the Constitution Association, which is a nonprofit. And got the Constitution classes. Yeah, we got all that stuff. Do a lot of stuff. But I also enjoy talking to you. So thanks for watching the video. We'll see you next time. You want to help out? Make sure you subscribe and make sure you share the video. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.